once again. I'm Minister Rodney Muhammad, a student in the ministry of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, a helper to him in the great city of Philadelphia at Mosque number 12. And I'd like for you to join us in prayer. Oh, surely I have turned myself to thee, trying to be upright, to him who originated the heavens and the earth, and I am not of the polytheists. Surely my prayer, my sacrifice, my life, my death is all for Allah. No associate has he. This am I commanded, and I am of those who submit. O Allah, thou art the King. There is no God but thee. Thou art my Lord, and I am thy servant. I have been greatly unjust to myself, and I confess my fault. So grant me protection against my fault, for none grants protection against fault but thou, and guide me to the best of morals, for none guides to the best of morals but thou, and turn away from me the evil and the indecent morals. None can turn from me the evil and the indecent morals but thou, O Allah. Make Muhammad successful. Make the true followers of Muhammad successful, as thou didst make Abraham and the true followers of Abraham successful, for surely thou art praised and magnified. And O Allah, bless Muhammad, and bless the true followers of Muhammad, as thou didst bless Abraham and the true followers of Abraham, for surely thou art praised and magnified in our midst. Ameen. In the name of Allah, the beneficent, the merciful, we thank Almighty God Allah, who is the revealer of all truth and the sender of all prophets, of whom we make no distinction. We thank Allah for Moses and the Torah. We thank him for Jesus and the gospel. And we thank him for Muhammad and the revelation of the Holy Quran. But with all of these servants of God, I'm most thankful to Almighty God, for in these end times, he has chosen to intervene in our affairs in the divine person of Master Fard Muhammad, to whom praise is due forever. The efficacy of his wisdom and power is evidenced in his exalted Christ, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, one found from among us that he chose and poured himself into, meaning the depth of his knowledge, the unequalness of his wisdom and power. To the two of these men, I stand before you as a helper in this rebuilding of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's work. I am indebted to them for their student, their apostle and servant, the Messiah to us today, that great preacher of freedom, justice, and equality, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And so in their names, it is our distinct privilege to give you, the nation of Islam, salutation of peace in the language and tongue of our fathers. We say, Assalamu alaikum. We have been on a series about self-determination. But before I go into the last part of this, I want to appeal to you in the public to help us here at Mosque number 12. As I'm standing here now this Sunday, you can go to mosque12.org. That's mosque12.org. And it's so easy to make a contribution. You can make a contribution anywhere from $10 to $1,000. But we need your financial support, and so we are calling on our public here in Philadelphia and throughout the Delaware Valley to help us here at Mosque number 12. And so we hope that you find your way to donate and contribute to help this ministry of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in your area. We know that he has preached to us the truth. Whether that truth has brought us joy, whether that truth has brought us strength, even if that truth has brought us some level of discomfort, we know that the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, even foes as well as friends, say there has been no departure of this man from the truth, as it has been made known to him by Almighty God and his Christ. And so That is our appeal to you, and we hope that you will work with us as we do everything to work with you on these streets of Philadelphia. We certainly wanted to raise the issue about the killing on the street and remind you that since 1979, when the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan was preaching, he was one of the only voices in America that went public about our killing of each other. Back then, I can remember sitting in those meetings, and he talked about the murder of self and kind in our own neighborhoods that was surpassing the number of us that died in the war in Vietnam. So the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has never left his concern, and he maintains certainly what others do to us in the way of injustice, what others do to us in the way of cruelty, and what others do to us in the way of systemic measures, institutional measures to cripple our real efforts to work in our own best interests. All of that is important, but he maintains that nothing is more important than what we do to each other. So the murder on the streets of Philadelphia has spiked again, and I can remember in 1994 when we were working toward the Million Man March, the murder rate was so high in the city of Philadelphia, but it wasn't a front table discussion. But we were raising the issue that it was going along with other stakeholders here in Philadelphia, and we worked very hard. Philadelphia and this area sent more people to the Million Man March than any other group in the country, according to those that did the studies and surveys there. The murder rate went down tremendously because we worked together, but we have to keep working together. We took a pledge October 16, 1995, that there'd be no beating, there'd be no cutting, there'd be no shooting of anyone, only in the way of self-defense. We took a pledge that we would not support black artists and we would not support black music if that artist and that music produced that which was offensive to the ear of the listener. Toxic music should have no place in our life today. And if you are still embracing toxic music while you are crying for a reduction of murder in the community, then we have to talk about the language that we're speaking, because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad offered the secret of effective language is that you must have subject-verb agreement. You can't be asking for people to stop the killing while you're embracing music that encourages it. Our dear sister, may Allah be pleased with her, C. Dolores Tucker, she went after this issue, and we should never have left this issue alone after we lost our sister, but she went after these corporate giants who benefit and profit from music designed for us to demean each other, devalue each other, which makes it easier for us to take the life one of the other because we don't have a good view of ourselves. And so I am thankful to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan for what he offers us in the way of that which can help us repair. But we must never take the voice of this one man, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and place it in the background. For it is like those that the Quran describes, they take the light and put it behind them. And if the light is behind you, then what can guide you to really move forward? If the light is behind you that can cast light on every issue and current reality, that we're grappling with today. Well, if the light is behind us, then we're involved in guesswork, and we're throwing money at problems, and we're throwing every idea that we have up on the table, but we're only involved in guesswork because the light is behind us. If the light is placed back in front of us, we may be able to cast enough light on these issues that are unfolding today. And so we hope to bring that light more and more to our people in the community. Self-determination, in short, talks about if you and I are not self-determined, then you and I are living from the determination of someone else. And what is that determination? We talked about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad revealing to us in a light called supreme wisdom that the father of this world was born with a determined idea. That means that he is not the originator of the idea, but the thought. And the thought fully developed, becoming an idea. That idea was in existence before his birth, but he was the vessel that would carry the idea and translate the idea, materialize it, and make it manifest to build from that idea. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that just as Allah called in the Quran the originator, he not only originated creation, but we are taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that he is the originator of himself. And by being the originator of himself, the environment that he worked in was an environment of layers of darkness that the Quran and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teach us is called triple darkness. And we know that he guided himself through the darkness rightly and successfully. And by doing that and overcoming the darkness, we learn from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that he took the darkness because it corresponds. The color of blackness corresponds with his victory over the darkness. He had an intense dislike for the darkness, and he desired light. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us there was no light. So God became a light unto himself. And he caused himself to rotate around his own light. This is magnificent wisdom for us to learn, for it takes us back to the origin of the originator, because out of him comes a creation that we call the great book universe. His dislike for the darkness caused him to make himself the light. And the Quran bears witness that Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth, and what we see that gives light only symbolizes his presence. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us in what the Muslims believe, something that all of you should read on the back page of our newspaper, that we believe in the one God, whose proper name is Allah. And we talked about that last Sunday. But we believe in him, but this is point number 1. But if you take the 1 and put it in front of point number 12, you get 112. And 112 is a surah called the Unity. And in the Unity, we find God. We find a God who was not begotten. Well, if God is his own originator, we can't say he was begotten because he didn't have parents. No parents were in existence for him to bring himself into existence. But there's one who begets not, and then there's one that was not begotten. Why are they in a surah called the unity? Could it be that the man that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad raised before this civilization as the coming of Allah in this man's person, Fard Muhammad, that he is perfectly unified in mind, heart, and spirit and mission with the originator of the heavens and the earth? And if he is, then by him coming by himself, just like the originator was by himself in the beginning, no one knew what he knew. And when Fard Muhammad came to these United States of America, no one knew what he knew. And so he came by himself. And when he comes by himself, the model for how he is working with those black folks here in these United States of America, a dark place, a place that was kept dark. No teacher was allowed to ever come to us to give us the kind of knowledge that would truly empower us. And so he comes with an intense dislike for the present darkness, intense dislike for the rulers of the darkness of this present world. And because there's no teacher here who can teach us and teach humanity to help humanity escape the darkness, then he must become his own light. And so Master Fard Muhammad is the light that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad directed us to. It is the light that he relied upon. And everything that he said and everything that he did pointing to that man. And when we departed from where the Honorable Elijah Muhammad directed us to, we began to collapse and descend back into the darkness of this world. But thanks be to Allah that his servant stood up, and just as the father of this world was born out of a determined idea, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's servant stood up more determined to bring us back out of the darkness, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And so I'm thankful to stand before you today to take up this subject about self-determination. If we're to be self-determined, as we said, the Quran speaks to this. Surely Allah changes not the condition of a people until they first, notice how he says, till they first change it themselves. To even tell us that something must be done first is to tell us that something must follow. But what follows can't come until something is done to precede that which follows. And so the first thing we must do, because we're crying for God, we're crying for the government, we're crying for those who are in power in the present world, that we want to make change. But while we are crying for this, asking, requesting, and some of us even demanding it, where is the demand on ourselves? That if we want change, are we willing to change? And if we must change, what kind of change would that be? This very world that we are in started with an idea, and we talked about that idea being domination and rule. And how you're going to dominate and rule, and we are taught this is done with tricks and lies. There's only one way to effectively deal with a trick, deal with a lie. You got to tell the truth. But what is the truth? Jesus said, ye shall know the truth, and the truth would set you free. Free from what? Free from the lie, free from the falsehood, free from the deceptions, free from all of that that disempowers us and makes us powerless before those who can only remain in power if you and I don't wake up. So we are taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that our history is certainly written in Scripture. In fact, to demonstrate the correctness and to demonstrate the methods by which we can prove all things, as the Bible says, of what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught. What the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is teaching is mathematics and science, which is knowledge classified, the laws of nature and the scriptures. And scripture, of course, we could say is the highest manifestation, not only of righteousness, but of the histories, because scripture is a reflection of history written ahead of time. That's why we call it prophecy. Well, the world starts with an idea, domination and rule. There must be a knowledge that gives itself over to domination and rule. And we talked about that and how we ended up 3/5 of a man, because that's just codified into law from some train of thought that was already in existence before they wrote it down. The thing is, where did it come from? How did it get here? And how did they establish that? In America, we live under a certain political or socio-political construct. You know, when a house is built and it's been completed, the house is built with only so many rooms in it. And unless you tear the house down and rebuild a new house, or leave that house to go to a new house, the existence in that house rests with the number of rooms that are already a part of its original structure. So if the house has 6 rooms, 7 rooms, I can't make the house have 8 rooms. If the house has 6 or 7 rooms and there's no room for me, I can't build another room on to the house without it taking the house out of its original framework. I hope you're following me here. There's a social construct in America, and that social construct was that white is supreme, and that this land was really built for whites. Look at how the Nationalization Act of 1790 worked. That nationalization, and it's one of the first in this country, it only applied to whites to become citizens of these United States of America. The red man who was here could not become a citizen under the Nationalization Act of 1790. The black man who was already here could not become a citizen of these United States of America in 1790, because the Nationalization Act, the very first of its kind, was only for white citizens. I invite you to look at a slide with me of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. He's dealing mathematically with Scripture. And he says, if we overlay biblical prophetic pictures of Israel in bondage to Pharaoh, he says, and overlay it over our history and our sojourn in America, we get congruence. The word congruence means to harmonize, to show that there's compatibility. Mainly, congruence means agreement. That means that a 400-year-old history of being in bondage, a 400-year-old history of being so completely mastered by the folk that got you in bondage that you don't even know who your God is. The folks that's got you in bondage, you don't really know your history, and you're not really acquainted with your real aim and purpose in life. All you know is that you're growing more and more unhappy with the unjust rule of a Pharaoh. So when the Lord talks to Moses, he talks about, I've heard the cry of my people as a result of them being under the hand of their taskmasters. Think of this. The Lord heard the cry, and it moved the Lord to give them a servant that he would empower Moses to be a deliverer. The minister says, when you look at this history written, which was said to have taken place 4,000 years ago. Of course, Egyptian history has been pointed out over and over again by the nation, even historians. And certainly when Walter Cronkite sat at the foot of the pyramids with Anwar Sadat, saying that Menachem Begin, prime minister of Israel at that time, was looking forward to coming to the land, meaning coming to Egypt where his fathers built the pyramids. And Sadat snapped back instantly without thought or hesitation that there was no history of those folks that are in Israel being in bondage in Egypt for 400 years. And Egyptian history can be traced back to the period claimed, and there's no trace of a people. You can't be in a land for 400 years and there's no trace of your presence. You can't be in a land for 400 years and there's no trace. There's no food that people eat. There's no dress that people engage. There's no custom that people have picked up. Notwithstanding that even when Jesus said, you'll know the truth and it'll set you free, those that said they had this history looked at Jesus and said, how could we be made free when we have never been in bondage to any man? And notice Jesus never refers to Pharaoh. Notice Jesus never refers to the children of Israel being in bondage to Pharaoh and being delivered. When Jesus mentions Moses, he mentions Moses to say that I have not come to cast away the law of Moses, but yea, I have come to fulfill it. When he mentions Moses in the book of John, Jesus doesn't refer to the work of Moses as a deliverer in Egypt, delivering his people out of the hand of Pharaoh. He says Moses did another work. He lifted up the serpent of the wilderness. Is this the same serpent that we see on the medical buildings in the present civilization, where the scepter of the law of Moses has two serpents wrapped around it? Wonder what that means and what it would say to us when we decode it. We've lived in a world for the last 6,000 years that's had some light, but it didn't have enough light to shed on that. It's easy to hide truth from people in the world that we have lived in the past 6,000 years because the black man and woman have lived in a vacuum. And in a vacuum, you are devoid of matter, and matter is a solid, liquid, or a gas. So the very air that we need to breathe to stay alive, it's taken out of a vacuum. This is just a symbolic picture that which would truly inspire us, that which would truly light up and fire up the soul of the black man and woman and set us on a right course to work and live in our own best interest, serving the will of God. That all of that was taken from us, and we were devoid of that in this vacuum-like period, we could even be said without air to breathe to be dead. And that's what the scripture calls us, the dead. Well, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is saying, well, wait a minute. He said, if side angle side equals side angle side, then geometrically these things are congruent. In other words, the minister is saying, when you look at the work of God coming, and we know they didn't know this God because Moses asked God, who should I say sent me? And he said, tell them I am. And you know, when you go to the English language, I am is perfect present tense. That's a God that's present. That's not a God that says I'm coming. He's there now. And notice what he tells Moses. There's something in your hand, Moses. No, it's not a Glock. It's not a 45. It's not an AK-47. That's not how you're going to get free. What is that in your hand? You said, it's my staff. I use it in tending the sheep and beating the leaves and that. Well, this staff would become what Moses would use as the instrument for the delivery of the children of Israel. So we're looking for someone functioning in a model like that. That means that a people would have a leader. He would have them disarmed of carnal weapons. The instrument that he would use would be a staff. Could this staff be a staff of people that he teaches and they go out in the land and begin to teach? I don't know. You tell me. But the main thing is they're not going to engage in violence to bring about this delivery because the Lord is going to fight their battle. So when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad stood up, he insisted that we not be armed with carnal weapons. 40 years ago, I joined the Nation of Islam. And when I came to the door, the first thing they wanted was everything out of my pocket except loose change and dollar bills. What's going on here? You know we live in the black world. We got to have something, a pocket knife, a razor, a chain, a baseball bat or something. Give me a pipe. No, brother, we want you to take all of that off of you. And we certainly don't want you to have a firearm. I didn't know it then. We come in, we don't know much. And God is the best knower. So I look back and now I hear people talking about gun legislation and we need to get rid of the guns and we need to do this. And 40 years ago, I walked into strong gun legislation when I stepped in the check room. And I haven't carried a gun in 40 years. And the Honorable Louis Farrakhan was teaching me and training me without my even knowing how to depend more on God and less on the carnal weapons of this world. I thank Allah for that kind of guidance. I thank Allah for this man, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, a determined black man. And he's determined to live his life completely giving himself over to God. He is determined that God would live in him and through him. And he would not let anyone deter him from that. This wonderful example from this beautiful human being, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who you so grossly misunderstand. There's no hatred in him for white people. There's no hatred in him for Jews. There's no hatred in him. He hates the evil that is done. He even hates the evil that black folk are doing to each other. He says hatred, that's the tool for the immature. An immature person, they don't know what to do but operate out of the emotion of hate because injustice has gone on so long without proper redress. It always brings up some of the worst out of us, but The minister said, when you learn how to understand the forces that produce hate and the things that cause human beings to hate, and you start mastering those kind of forces and those kind of things, then you don't need to hate. You certainly don't like what's going on. And you'll speak out against what's going on based on the truth, because the truth is the only thing that can bring correction to what's going on. We thank Allah for the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, so we can walk. Oh, they accuse us of, well, y'all hate and hate. But what have we done? Since action speaks louder than words, what have we done to demonstrate to you that we hate you? What have we done to say we hate white people? We've done nothing to you. We don't even carry carnal weapons. We don't work against whites. We're too busy trying to give our energy for the upliftment of our people. We're too busy wrestling with the condition that we find our people in. And if this world was free of hate, they would get behind the Honorable Louis Farrakhan and they would start turning resources in a direction that, when it comes to his hand, wealth and wisdom would unite, and overnight we could begin to start the real remedy of the condition that the black man and woman find themselves in. The equality of races is non-existent in this country. The wealth gaps prove it. After all this time, you know, white folks look at us sometime and they say, you know, it seems to me it's a fair game. You had a black man as president for 8 years, so you can't keep talking about racism, white supremacy, systemic racism, white privilege, and all of this. You got a black man to the White House. He was in the White House 8 years. You still crying, you still talking about injustice, you still talking about you don't have enough, you still talking about poverty. Why are you still poor? But see, there are things that happen to us. And, you know, our suffering is not only back in a period when you and I were under chattel slavery. You know, when we were slaves, I have to retrace some of the steps. They talked about a group of us getting 40 acres and a mule. The only people that got something at the end of the Civil War, tangibly speaking, were the former slaveholders in the South, because Abraham Lincoln had been murdered in a theater. And Andrew Johnson, the man that took over from him, worked a deal out in the South where the people who lost the war, these are people who broke away from the Union, and not only did they break away from the Union, they produced their own flag, and they had their own president, Jefferson Davis. And even after this level of betrayal and treachery, the vice president who becomes the president, he gives them back their lands. And you know, when they got their lands back, you should find out more about the history of what really happened to the black man. See, you don't know about the vagrancy laws. You don't know that when they no longer had a slave, they had to create a condition that would force the black man back to the plantation and force the black man back into servitude and subject him to hard and unjust labor, certainly where he would get nothing for his labor. There was a vagrancy law. So you walking down the street and the police stop you. What's your name? You tell them your name. Where do you work? Well, I'm not working right now. I'm unemployed. You unemployed? It's against the law for a black man to be unemployed. See, The law was you had to be under a work contract, and if you weren't, you were sent to prison. And then they made a deal with the prisons to take the prisoners and put the prisoners to work. And you were made to do this. You were sentenced to do this for a number of years. Black folks scraped their nickels and things together, and we began to save money in the Freedmen's Bank after the Civil War. And the Freedmen's Bank was supposed to be a bank now to really help the black man get a foot up. But the peonage system is going on, and you're putting black men in jail, and you're forcing them to hard labor to help these people in the South work their lands without having, not only they don't have to pay you to work the land, they don't have to pay taxes on you even though you like their property. Just look at the corruption. So after crippling you this way, then they see that we saved up a lot of money in the Freedmen's Bank. So they went and took the money. I mean, in the end, they just took the money from the Freedmen's Bank. We had no insurance. So all the black folks' savings that was in the Freedmen's Bank, they said in today's dollars, it would come to about $4.5 billion that we had in there. They took that money. And so black folks learned two things with their money. They said, one, if you put it in the bank, they'll take it from you. So we start hiding it under the mattress, build a little thing up in the chicken coop and slide the money up in there and hide it. We had all kind of hiding places. But we also learned that saving money didn't help you, because sometimes they came and raided your farm and found your money and took that. So we started spending the money as soon as we got our hands on it. And God help us, family. We still doing that today. And so it has produced out of us a consumer group of people who, as soon as money is in our hand, we're trying to find some way to spend that money. I take you to a slide, and it doesn't have to have anything on it, but it's called the Homestead Act. And you see a postage stamp here for 4 cents then. I don't know what a postage stamp costs now. I think it's 55 cents. But here's one for 4 cents. But the Homestead Act, they wanted people to really migrate and populate the western part of these United States of America. So what they did, they gave away. The most you paid was the filing fee to get the land. And they gave away 270 million acres of land. People just came in and became landowners. When people tell you, my folks moved here, we're white, but we were poor, and we worked the land, and we worked ourselves up from the ground up. No, they were given a leg up. And the Homestead Act gave white folks plenty of land to work with. Now, I want you to remember that these are white folks who were immigrants, so they did not fight in the Civil War. But the black man was here, and he fought in the Civil War on both sides. Promised from the Union 40 acres and a mule. He never saw the 40 acres or the mule. But they ask you today, why are black people in the condition, see, that they are in? And sometimes we look and we start criticizing ourselves for our very condition, ignorant of the history that we have behind us, where they crippled us. So we didn't want to be around the folks who had beat us, the folks who for 310 years at least were constantly raping our wives and our daughters and our mothers. You go after Bill Cosby, I can't defend what someone does as a private act, but you go after him like he's the worst man in history. We can give you a lineup of some of the worst men in history when it comes to the mistreatment, not only of the black woman, they've mistreated the white woman. She's not even treated right, evidenced by the feminist movement. evidenced by women's suffrage movement. If you're a white woman in this land and white men rule the land, how the hell are you suffering? And if you are suffering, you're telling the world something about your man. So how can she be right and we be wrong? How can she point to the white man and say he's unjust, and we point to the white man and say he's unjust, and they tell us we're wrong, but they lift her movement? No. In 1865, black folks got the right to vote. And, we say, well, we voted. And you got to remember, in 1866, women couldn't vote. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan always brings this back up to our attention, but women couldn't vote. So when we talk about we voted and put 664 people into office, I mean, we were lining up at the polls and voting. That was black men. That was black men doing that. And even with the right to vote, the states began to set up all kind of tripwires and things to keep us from voting. You're a black man. You come up and you say, you're here to vote. They say, nigga, how many bubbles in a bar of soap? See, dumb stuff like this. In Lerone Bennett Jr.'s book, Before the Mayflower, he talks about a black man who had learned how to speak Spanish, French, and German. And he spoke English exceptionally well. And when he went to vote, they put something down in front of him, written in English. And they said, what does this mean? And he read it out and told them. They put something down there in Spanish and said, what does this mean? And he read it out and told them. They put something down there in French and said, nigga, what does this mean? And he read it out and told them. Then they put something down in German and said, nigga, what does this mean? And he read it out and told them. So they put something down there in Chinese and said, what does this mean? He said, it means you really don't want me to vote. Now, that's a story that Lerone Bennett Jr. tells, but these were the realities of what we were living in these United States of America. And the Homestead Act took white people that did not have land, did not have homes, gave them land, and set up land banks to give them what they needed so they can build homes. Now, they got a right to take care of their own people. So I don't stand here in condemnation of the Homestead Act, but if the black man has been here and has served you and bled and died for your causes, and notwithstanding, you had promised him 40 acres and a mule, and you have reneged on this promise, only to come back in later generations and blame us for the crippled condition that we are in. In 1832, Thomas Daddy Rice came up with an act where he went on stage in Cincinnati, it said. He painted his face black, painted his lips white, put on a little suit too small for him, and he came out with an act where he said there was a Negro that was crippled. He said, but even though that Negro was crippled, he sure knew how to dance. And so he began to try to emulate or imitate a so-called crippled so-called Negro dancing. And every time he would do this dance and leap in the air, the crowd would yell, Jim Crow, Jim Crow. And of course, Jim Crow then became the cry and the symbol for a black man that was crippled, but little did we know it was going to become a system that would cripple the black man's efforts to put himself up on better footing and equal footing with those in the land that have once ruled over him. The wealth gaps today still bear witness to this. I want you to look at something else. This is the GI Bill of 1956. Black folks received less than 5% of the home loans. I started to put the 2% down there, but I said, I'm going to give them a little leeway. But black folks hardly saw the benefit of this program. But after World War II, white men that had fought in World War II, who were many, were given loans. You don't have to go there and qualify for this. This loan is already sitting there for you. All you got to do is go sign the paper and you're in a house. I'm just trying to show you, you're in rulership. You got the top spot in the land, and every program is out there afforded to get you. Well, black folks are always on welfare. They didn't create welfare for us. We found out white folks was on it. You can't show me a program that's out here that black folks may be getting and taking some advantage of because of some kind of condition. The Honorable Louis Farrakhan, he's not ashamed to share with us the story that his mother used the welfare system when she had to raise 2 young men. But his mother worked and did things to earn money so that his brother could learn the piano and he could learn the violin. And his mother took him one day when they were stronger financially in the home, and she had a check in her hand that they had given her, and she was giving them back their money to tell them she could take it from here. That's the kind of man that I am with, a determined black man. That not only is he going to stand up and call on his God to help him to take care of himself and his family, but he now is giving his life to us so that we can learn to live the same way. So these were, people were getting farms, people were getting, and these, notice the word guaranteed loans. Guaranteed loans. So while they came here, and I failed to mention to you that many of these whites that came here from other European nations, they were immigrating them here. They came here illiterate. Do you know, back during the time that the larger immigrations from Europe were taking place, if you were wealthy, well-to-do, you got an education. If you weren't wealthy and well-to-do, it was more than likely that you would grow up your whole life without an education. How are we going to take all of these whites in the land and leave them illiterate or semi-illiterate and build a great nation? So they came up with an idea, public schools. And the public school was set up not for black folks. The public school was set up for those immigrants that had come over. We began to go to the public school, and the public school was set up so that you didn't have to be wealthy with a lot of money to go in these schools. I'm a product, at least in primary schooling, of the public school system. And I can tell you from attending a public school in an all-black neighborhood, I spent my 8th grade in a public school in almost an all-white neighborhood. And I can tell you from day one, my first day when I got to that school with them white folks, it was almost like college compared to what I was doing, the work assignment that was put on me. And we had to really step up our game when it came to science and math. There were tools there like for home economics and things like this. And they had some bad actors in the school that were white, but primarily what was afforded us, the teachers, the school didn't look no better than the school I had left. What was different in the school when I got there was the atmosphere of expectation. the atmosphere of expectation that we expect better from you. And we're going to give you assignments that you're going to have to raise your game to get to, but we're not going to curve something to entertain your weakness in this area. We're here to coach you into your strengths. And when I was in that school, I always remembered what I walked into. When I left one school on the south side of Chicago to go to another school on the south side of Chicago, the only thing was one was pretty much administrated right there on site with black folks and the other with whites. And so I graduated from that school. There was only 3 black people in that graduating class, and I was one of them. But I'm telling you, I did not see that level of expectation until years later when I joined on with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And because he is so self-determined, you can't be around this man without feeling a demand on your life to be better morally, to strengthen yourself intellectually, to be a partaker of the divine nature, to not be weak anymore when you can feed from a knowledge that does nothing but give you strength. And if you're coming out of strength, it's because you're not feeding on it. He calls on all that come with him, stay in the process. Because we're in a country that's doing nothing but deceiving you, and they're desperate. And the idea of domination and rule was to last for only 6,000 years. That's why you don't like it too much anymore. And it's becoming more difficult to control people because people don't want to comply with that no more. And if you got a household of people that will go along with somebody else determining your existence, I guarantee you that God has saw to it, if you got babies in that house, that baby got a different idea. The things that we go along with, the things that we bow to, the things that we've grown complacent with, we've given birth to children that are not complacent and that are not bound. And these children are probably causing you a lot of problems. They're misguided. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad used the servant found in the book of Judges in the Bible, Samson. Samson was strong as hell, and he was beating the heck out of his enemies. And Samson, they got a hold of him, and they gouged out his eyes. So his strength came back to him, but not his sight. And so when Samson used his strength to bring down their kingdom, because he couldn't see, he couldn't get out of the way of the destruction. Don't you see our children tearing the country up, tearing the neighborhoods up, tearing up any kind of reputation you trying to build? They know we live in a community of high crime and murder. And when I talk to police cadets, I tell them, you getting ready to get a gun and a badge. They're going to send you to some neighborhood in Philadelphia and tell you to go look for crime and look for the criminal. I said, but I want you to look at the school that trained our children in substandard education. I want you to look at these little corner stores that are around here because we live in food deserts. I want you to look at how they have disinvested in the community, even though we have worked to put tax dollars into the coffers. I want you to understand that while they're telling you to go look for the crime and look for the criminal, you are already looking at the crime. Hell, the neighborhood that you've been assigned to where you got the precinct, that's a crime right there. We would do good to take the yellow tape and put it all around the community and say, stay out, this is a crime scene. And we started to do CSI work, crime scene investigation, picking up elements and things that it manifests the crime and trace us back to the criminal. Well, let me finish this here. America, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan once pointed out to us, of course, that America is like a lazy cook. She or he wanted to bake a cake. And, you trying to bake this cake, you moving so quick, you stirring up everything, and you know what? The thing is in the oven now, and you forgot to put the baking powder in. Now, without the baking powder, from what I understand, the cake ain't gonna rise right, and it's not gonna be right. So the lazy cook, instead of saying, look, let me take this out, scrap it, and start all over, and be sure to put the baking powder in the mix so that when I put the cake in the oven, everything will cook and rise right. No, the lazy cook pulls the cake out and takes some baking powder and sprinkle it on top and put it back in there. That's what America's like. She got started off wrong. We were here, but we weren't in the mix. She got started off wrong. She's putting together a mixture for a land, but black folks were overlooked and set to the side. Now she done put this thing in the oven, and it ain't growing right. And because it's not growing right, dissatisfaction has come to 100%. So she pulls it out because the voices of dissent are too loud, and she's trying to sprinkle the baking powder on top. In other words, diversity and inclusion. Don't be satisfied with that. Ain't nothing going to be right in these United States to America till they go back to the Constitution and the seal of this country and how they framed it in the beginning, and make this thing right so that it can grow right and the citizens of the United States of America can experience true freedom, justice, and equality. I want us to leave with these words from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, a self-determined man. Because all of our movements, whether we're NAACP, Urban League, whether we're National Action Network, most of our movements, they're all hinged on pressuring white people to change their mind about us and receive us equally as human beings like themselves. You have a right to want to be received that way. I have a right to want to be received that way, but look what the minister says. They will never receive you until you are wise enough to receive yourself. The Staple Singers made a song about respect yourself, and if you don't respect yourself, ain't nobody gonna really give a hoot about you. He says, they will never respect you until you're intelligent enough to show self-respect. My God. And you cannot show self-respect in a vacuum. Self-respect comes from a knowledge of self, which makes you see yourself as you are. Then you can expect from yourself what you should. Family, it is knowledge that builds us up. It's knowledge that empowers us. The quality of that knowledge. For us, is self-knowledge. The knowledge that we're getting in schools, academically and all of that, it's not amounting to anything. It's proving that it's not requisite knowledge if it's not making you to want to get up and build for yourself. People come from other countries, and they're learning some of the same things you and I are learning in these classrooms, but somehow they leave that classroom with a thought in mind. Better still, a more developed thought, an idea in mind, that I'm going back to help my people. What happened to us? We come out of there figuring, I'm going to help myself, and I'm trying to make as much money as I can. It's nothing wrong with wanting to better yourself in that, but a whole nation of people, nearly 48 million of us, We can't live as individuals and expect real social change. The only way we can bring about real change would come from us making a change. And so we're calling on you to turn to that which can help you to change for the better. The light of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad expressed through his servant, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. It's a life-giving teaching. It will help us to first see ourselves in a better light. And when we see ourselves in a better light, we can expect better from ourselves. Once we expect and exercise better from ourselves, now we treat you better. And God willing, you turn to the light and you see yourself in a better light, and now you treat me better. Just that alone would start bringing our dollars together. Every 12 months we spend $1.3 trillion. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has shown us how those dollars alone could begin to heal and bring about a better condition in Black America. That doesn't mean that we're telling you in your organization and your mission statements to let the people who have done injustice to us off of the hook. You don't have to let them off the hook, but my God, you don't have to get on the hook with them and then we all stay still. There are still things we can do while we're fighting for equal rights. There's still things that we can do while we're fighting against voter suppression. There's still things we can do in our own community to make our condition better without waiting for someone else to determine if they're going to feel better about yourself. No, it's time for you to determine for yourself, self-determination, that you are going to see yourself in a better light. And that means you're going to turn yourself to a re-education and a retraining of the Black mind. And there's no other place to really get that in the way that you need to get it than the truth teller today in the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I'm his helper, Rodney Muhammad. We invite you to support us at mos12.org, mos12.org. Go there right now and type in what level of contribution or donation you'll make to Mos number 12. Thank you again. Thank you for listening. Assalamu alaikum.